Welcome to Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
My name is Erika, and I really like to watch horror movies.
My name is Katy, and I really like to overanalyze things. What are we overanalyzing today?
Well, to kick off our hot alien summer. We are overanalyzing the original Alien from 1979. So for like the 2.5 people who don't know, the movie Alien is about a crew of
cargo haulers,
who are interrupted on their route home and awoken from their hypersleep because they have received what they believe is a distress signal. Mm-hmm. And so they go and investigate the distress signal, and hilarity ensues.
Yeah.
There's an alien species waiting for them that ends up killing them off one by one.
Yeah.
But this movie's not a slasher.
No. Apparently, when they were trying to get Harry Dean Stanton to join the crew, join the cast, he was like, I don't like horror sci-fi shit. And they were like, no. It's
a thriller.
And then there were none in space.
It's a
It's
thriller.
Agatha Christie, man.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, who's doing it? How's it happening? Who's going to die next?
However, no.
But no.
I think Harry Dean Stanton is in a monster movie.
I think he is too.
And I think that's fantastic.
I think he brings
so much
what needs to be brought to it.
Shout
As
out
do
to Harry
they
Dean
all.
Stanton.
Anyway, general thoughts on this film. Jump scare count 2.
Jump scare count 2. Do you remember what they were?
They were both the actual alien. None of those fake outs got me.
Mm-hmm, good. Not the dead face hugger
No.
that falls from the...
No. It was, I forget, it was one of the times when the alien gets, I forget which person, if it was like Brett maybe, or speaking of Harry Dean Stanton, or somebody else. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the first one. The other one was, even though I also kind of knew that one was coming, when it's in the escape pod and you think Sigourney Weaver's safe, but no, she isn't. And it like reaches out at her.
Yeah.
Because it kind of looks like it's part of the ship.
Yeah.
So mechanical. That one did get me. That one got me.
Nice. I really enjoy this movie. I'm actually in the middle of making my way through the entire Alien canon in chronological order of when the movie takes place.
Oh, so you started prequels.
I started with the prequels, and then Alien, and now actually next up is Aliens, and then Alien 3, which I've never seen, and Alien Resurrection, which I have also never seen. Haven't heard great things, but I want.
And then there's also Covenant.
Oh yeah, that's another prequel.
Oh, that's also a prequel.
Yeah.
I don't know how it all works.
So I really like this movie. I don't know, it's funny, we were talking about it and I thought that it was kind of like a nice slow burn, like it's kind of just enough to keep us going along, but you do not feel the same way.
I feel so bad about it. I feel like it's my fault, but I kind of just don't like this movie that much. I'm like, it's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
I just kind of wanted, I don't know, I was kind of sleepy when I watched it, so maybe the slow tension wasn't working for me, but I did just sort of keep thinking about like, especially the initial shots of like kind of like isolation and stuff and like the slow building of things. I was thinking a lot about The Thing and how that movie's building of suspense really did work for me. Mm-hmm. And that for some reason this one didn't, even though it's like it should have. So it may have just been where I was in my day.
Right. Also, I wonder, like, do you much care or find like science fiction that impactful?
That is the other problem, also.
Especially
I'm not
like
a sci-fi person.
Like the spaceship.
The spaceship suit is so boring to me. I hate spaceships.
Like
I'm
spaceship
sorry.
sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like the way that like The Thing is sci-fi.
Yeah.
But it takes place on Earth.
Yeah.
Is that
and
maybe
it could be part of it.
Yeah.
And just sort of like the science-y mumbo jumbo stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
And I think you and I both, while I do like this movie and there's some stuff I'm really excited to talk with you about, I think we both came to the agreement that this is not a feminist movie.
Yeah, I feel like it gets built just because Ripley is just sort of like
because
such a
there's
feminist
a final
icon.
girl. Yeah.
And I think in Aliens and stuff, she becomes
badass.
way more of a badass.
Yeah.
And so they sort of like misremember her as also being a badass in this
In the
film
first
when
one.
like they're all just sort of there doing their best. She's not particularly badass.
Can I just get this? Is it possible to get the final girl stuff out of the way?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Or is it going to come back?
Okay, well,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Ripley is just very much our final girl. And like, we've been talking about the last few episodes, like the final girl often needs the first film to step into
her final girlness. Yeah.
Yes. And
her
so
power.
And so while this is not a slasher film, I think Ellen Ripley follows that in a lot of ways.
That's true. That is true.
But again, like, that is every slasher movie a feminist manifesto?
Just because it has a final girl? No, as we've discussed a lot, there's like a lot of interesting tension happening with gender in those final girl situations.
And there's a lot of interesting
they exist because we want to see women scared more than we want to see men scared.
Yes. And then even this movie has some really interesting tensions around gender and sex.
In some ways that I like, and in other ways where I'm like, why are we being so rapey?
Yeah.
Which, of course, this film does deal with a lot of imagery around sexual assault, so that's just sort of like a general warning for this episode of our podcast. Like, that will be a theme that comes up and that we will talk about.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that word at least once.
Yeah.
Probably twice.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna talk about it. So just warning you now, if that's not something that you want to get into, this may not be the episode for you, and that is okay, and we love you.
And I think we also were talking about this off mic, and I think we have this conversation pretty much any time we cover a movie that's over 10 years old, is like, but how much of it is just the fact that it's 1979?
Yeah, I don't know.
And that, like, everyone attached to the pre and post production of this film is a guy.
Right. No, yeah. And what it means that, like, they set out...
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said everybody. I don't know, but like, let's get real.
I do believe the casting was done by a woman.
Oh, casting?
Often is done by women.
It is done by women, yeah.
Because we're intuitive.
We like pretending like we know anything about Hollywood right now. But like written, directed, produced by men.
Yeah, lots of men's hands on this.
I also it's my understanding, because again, I know so much about Hollywood, is that the editors also play a very important role, and that actually often major like Hollywood films are edited by women.
Yeah, and that they don't get the same kind of billing.
No, of course not.
What was I going to say? Oh, also that the script itself was written to be like unisex, where Ripley could have been played by a man or a woman.
Right. Let's just touch on that now. It's the story everybody knows about this movie.
Yeah,
The script was written with just like a little script writer's note that the characters were
that it didn't matter,
gender neutral.
Because we're in the future,
sure it didn't
man.
use the term gender neutral.
Gender dynamics are different.
I'm sure they use the term unisex.
In the future, women and men can both be long haulers in space. Who cares, man?
And so what's funny about that is that we have 7 humans, or at least 7 characters we believe to be human.
Yes.
And still only
2,
only 2 ladies
and
out of what is
one
supposed
person
to be
of color.
Unisex.
Yeah.
A unisex crew. We get 2
the
ladies.
sign of like this utopian future where it's like anybody can do anything, and it's like no, they're still overwhelmingly white men, like majority white men.
The patriarchy on the Nostromo is strong.
It's strong,
alive and well. Yep. Yeah.
And like I feel like a lot of Ripley's power comes from the fact that she does play kind of androgynous in the film.
Very much so, yeah.
More so than Lambert does. Also, just one general thing before we get into like the characters and more of like
the themes.
Just sort of more generally talking about the characters as a whole. Just how interesting I think it is that they're like kind of like with The Thing, we have these people who are like very separated from their society.
They are isolated.
Because they are doing some sort of like important work that requires solitude, and like these, either because they have to be in Antarctica or because they're like on these long stretches of space where there's just nobody, and it's like this inhospitable terrain. And so it's like these people are like subjecting themselves to this isolation for the good of a larger society that they're not even going to get partake in, which is like kind of, I don't know, it says a lot about who these people are, while at the same time they're just sort of like blue collar workers. Right. You know, they're just like truck drivers.
Yeah, they're literally futuristic truck drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're doing this like kind of amazing work because they're going to be gone for who knows how long in their little stasis.
Right. It is unclear.
It is unclear. We know that when they wake up, they're still like months away from Earth. Yeah. So like, what are they going to miss while they're away from Earth doing this?
Yep.
Do they have families? We don't really know.
And
do
also,
they just live for the company?
Like maybe they're like indentured servants.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, they get paid, but who knows?
Yeah. But we never really say what they're getting paid in. You know what I mean? Like
just shares, man.
Shares.
You'll get your share.
Yeah.
How can we get less share?
Like the way like sharecroppers used to like pay their farmers and like
Yeah.
fucking wooden coins that could only be spent
But
on
at
their
the-
property
yeah,
kind of thing.
Good old company store.
A company store, yeah. Anywho, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, all we know is that they're transporting like some sort of mineral ore.
Right, and who knows how incredibly beneficial that mineral is to the advancement of humanity and society.
Or if it's just more shit going towards their military, which, as we discover, the company wants the alien.
Yes.
Because they
As
think
a
it can
weapon.
go towards their military.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know.
And then it's like, okay, are we living in a world where we have like privatized militaries now?
Yeah.
Or does Weyland-Yutani, which we know is the name of the company, which is not said in this movie, because this is the thing.
It's written on one of the computer screens.
Fantastic.
But written differently than it will be later.
Fantastic. Well, retconning.
But yeah, Weyland-Yutani, because the idea was something about like the British and Japanese conglomerate or something. For some reason, they wanted to say that in 1979.
Okay, yeah.
They're like in the future.
Yeah.
Britain and Japan.
Imperialist
besties.
Which, like,
yeah.
But then, of course, this original film only contains so much of the canon.
Yes.
But, like, there is so much that, like, we understand, like, reading into watching Alien from 1979.
Yeah.
Like, we understand,
Without
like,
getting
oh,
to the
okay, and then that
sequels.
leads to that, and that happens because of that, So it's really hard to, I'm going to do my best to only reference Alien, but, like, it's going to be really hard not to be like, well, and we know because in Aliens.
Yeah. Well, I'll be able to. I have not seen Aliens since the first time I watched both Alien and Aliens, which is when I was like in late middle school, early high school.
I really truly believe that you will like Aliens more.
I think I would. I remember liking Aliens when I was a kid. Yeah.
Well, there's a coded lesbian.
Yeah. And Sigourney Weaver gets to actually be badass. Yeah. Like in this film.
And she becomes a mother.
Well.
Which is incredibly relevant.
Mother.
And then there was another thing I wanted to say. Oh, that's right. What do they call it? Like, I always call it Futurama. Like the people in the past imagining the future.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like people in the 1950s, but like, what's the year 2000 going to look like?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're going to fly.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, anyway. Retrofuturism.
Yes.
Retrofuturism.
There it
Woo!
is.
Okay.
We knew there was
the retrofuturism of the Weyland-Yutani, like it's going to be the Brits and the Japanese, like in the late 1970s, being like, who are the imperial powers?
Yeah.
The Brits and the Japanese.
Also, just speaking of the retrofuturism, a good moment to just sort of put in terms of like good horror shit, good set. I love that the ship that they're on, their sort of version of retrofuturism, is that this is like some old junker.
Yeah.
That like their equipment's not great. Like it looks like dingy and old.
Shit's kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that choice.
Like there's just steam coming out of places.
Okay.
And neither of the engineers seemed concerned about that. So like I'm not either, but also I'm a little concerned.
I lost my mind during Brett's death when he's in a room where there's just like water dripping and chains dangling.
Yes.
Like what is that room for?
Oh, I actually found out what that room is for.
Oh God, was there a reason?
It's like a holder.
Oh, so you could click things to the chains.
Yeah,
and hold things.
yeah.
I saw one thing where the set designer, or maybe Ridley Scott or somebody, was just like, "Yeah, it didn't make sense, but that shot really needed more movement."
Okay,
so maybe they decided later to like.
But like, could there not be more movement with more dripping water and not chains?
I know,
or vice versa.
But it does add to just sort of like the ramshackle vibe of the whole ship, especially in comparison to the insane set when they get to the planet, which is also a ship that's like broken down or something, but it looks way more futuristic.
Right, even though it's actually really old at that point.
Yeah. It's just sort of like spacey. Like, ooh, that's sci-fi.
Very sci-fi.
So I do like those elements. I love actually all of the art design on this and like the design of the alien, and like H.R. Geiger knew his shit.
Yeah. I was also really like kind of taken aback by the room where Dallas goes to talk to Mother.
Oh yeah.
And it's like very brightly lit and there's just like a bunch of blinking lights and I'm like, huh, that's weird.
Yeah, and kind of different.
And it's also very 1979 because like well, if Mother is, like the voice of the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Dallas would have to go to one specific location to access Mother. Yeah. Like, wouldn't Mother just
that other thing where, like, the message that Mother had was, like, for his eyes only. Yes. So he had to, like, go see it.
Oh, that's right. Good point.
Separately.
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah, and somehow that's how Ripley was able to find out about, like, the special other direction. The thing about, like, the ship, the crew is expendable.
Yeah.
Bring back the alien.
Yep.
Like, it was because she was in that room, sort of getting into the mainframe or whatever. But I do like the sort of, I don't know. Yeah, just sort of a, like, white and clean, sort of like where their pods are and where that room is, and just sort of like the womb of mother.
Very.
Yeah.
Very. Yes, womb. That's the word for sure.
Speaking of wombs, in comparison, then we have where Kane finds the sort of egg womb realm that first starts us on our alien adventure, really.
Yes, which
The danger.
takes a long time to get there.
God, it does. Oh my God, I almost fell asleep.
Even before we get there, though, Kane, R.I.P. John Hurt.
R.I.P. John Hurt. Love the man.
Kane is the first to wake up, right? Because they're all in hypersleep, and their little hypersleep pods are also like interesting little wombs.
Yes.
Right?
And so, it's like that very big contrast between like this nice, pristine, sort of like sexless birth of them awakening from their pods versus
no blood,
a
no screaming, no pain.
The sort of like more, I don't know, kind of mucusy egg pods that they find, that Kane finds. And then later, of course, Kane's very famous birthing scene, which is very bloody and very deadly.
Yeah.
And kind of sexual in the sense that he gets, orally impregnated.
Penetrated. Yeah.
So, like, there's a lot going on there with birthing. And
so I just thought that it was interesting that Kane is the first to wake up.
Yeah.
And, like, I was just kind of thinking...
And then the first to die.
And wondering if that matters. Yeah. Because he is also the first to encounter the alien straight up and also the first one to die.
He's just a go-getter, man.
He is a go-getter. And you were mentioning,
Is he the one who was smoking, too?
Yes. Well, Lambert also smokes.
Okay.
But Kane is like almost consistently chain smoking,
which is not related to anything. But I just cannot imagine smoking on a spaceship. You're circulating the air.
It's 1979. I don't know.
That's true. Yeah, they're still smoking on airplanes.
Retrofuturism. Of course, you'll be able to smoke. Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting. But he is like, he's a pretty curious go-getter type of guy.
That was like my big note about him was that curiosity killed the Kane.
Yep, sure did. Because he
just kept poking in. He wanted to be on the mission to go explore.
Yeah, Dallas is like, hey, we need some people to go down.
And Kane's like, me, please. And everybody's like, well, of course you volunteer.
Yeah. And then
this is what he's known for.
Oh, yeah. And then he like, quote unquote, falls into the pit where the eggs are. And I was like, guess I'll just walk amongst them.
Yeah.
Guess I'll just get my barely shielded face real close.
To this alien organism that's clearly fleshy and weird and scary.
Yeah.
The self-preservation of this crew, like the self-preservation instinct, severely lacking.
Very.
Except for Ripley. Everybody else
that's true.
Sucks at it.
Because that's true. Because Dallas and Kane isn't like Kane's second in command. He's the executive officer. So when Dallas is off the ship and Kane, then
Ripley's in
charge.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because Kane is obviously hurt, and I'm sure they're freaking out because this is an unknown.
Yeah. I mean, he has a thing attached to his face.
Yeah.
That almost looks human with its little finger joints, but also looks very alien.
Very insect-like to me.
Yeah.
But
then has that long tentacle-y
we don't need
around his neck.
We don't need to talk about that. And Ripley's the one who's the only one with any goddamn sense. She's like, quarantine protocol states this, and this.
The protocol. The
one that like is there for our safety. And
that we're supposed to follow no matter what.
Yeah, and of course they're just like, but Kane's really hurt, he could die. And Ripley brings up a really good point. It's like, well, if you let him in, we could all die.
And you know what happened?
She was right. So I think this is the way that this movie is just like accidentally feminist.
Yeah.
Just by deciding that Ripley was female.
Yeah.
And that the other two officers above her were male. And that Ian Holmes' character, Ash, is also male and to undermine her.
He's always there,
And it seems like it's because he's a dick and maybe a misogynist, but no, he's
a robot.
He's a robot
with different orders.
And has a different set of
goals.
Yes. What else about Kane? Well, I mean, other than Kane is the one who provides us with the chestburster scene, right?
Right, which is iconic.
It is iconic.
Great scene, top to bottom.
Very good.
I know I'm being a bit of a rat about this film, but great scene.
No, it is good. And like the way that it gets built up, like the way that these idiots just think everything's fine now. And they're just...
I don't understand it. Because even Dallas at that point was like, let's keep Kane quarantined while he's, out. They even think like, oh, maybe we could like put him back in cryo sleep or something.
Yeah.
And then just because he like popped back up awake, they're like, oh, never mind. Let's all just have dinner.
And get ourselves back to sleep. Yeah.
Like, talk about, I mean, Captain, baby.
Way to
Your
not
lack
Captain.
of self-preservation is one thing, but like you're putting your entire crew at risk for what?
I know.
And I'm like, I mean, I guess maybe he's going off of what his science officer says, which makes sense in these situations. I think he does have a line about like in these sort of situations, Ash has the final say because he's the, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it also was just sort of like, I don't know. It just made it very clear to me, at least, that these are cargo haulers.
Yeah.
Not a team trained for like search and rescue,
Yeah.
which is something that Parker, I think, also brings up.
That's true.
And like, yeah, they never should have been sent to this planet to begin with. The only reason is because they were nearby and because they were expendable, not because they were a team actually capable of dealing with this. They could have sent a team actually who knew what they were getting into. Like there is an alien, some sort of something going on. Let's get a team equipped to like capture and contain it. Mm-hmm. No, they just wanted to give the alien as many sacrifices as they could.
Huh. Yeah, and it's interesting because, yeah, it's so funny the way that as the story develops, it becomes more obvious that the company, it really only cares about, do they call it like the asset or something?
I don't remember.
They don't.
Organism.
Yeah. Organism, yeah.
Something.
The idea is that they want the alien, like for their own personal, profit to use as probably something involving war. But what's funny to me is just like, the audacity and the gumption that like a company thinks like we can handle it. This like unthinking killing machine, perfect organism. Like it's cool. Once it comes here, it'll be fine. We'll have it under control.
And it's like, they were really relying on Ash being able to bring it back. I guess because maybe he would be safer because he's a android.
Right. He can't necessarily
die. If the alien is a perfect killing machine and kills everybody, how is that cargo ship going to get home?
Right.
I don't know. The alien, the company is kind of just stupid, and obviously they're sending them all to their doom. Yeah. And that's just capitalism.
And this is why Brett and Peter have a very important job. Brett and Parker.
Should we talk about Brett and Parker?
Let's, yeah. So Brett and Parker are my favorite because they're best friends.
I know. I like that when we first see them, they're like kind of playing some sort of handsy game on the table. And then Parker's calling them baby and stuff. And they're like, we got an idea, don't we, baby?
Yeah. And Parker's like he's the one who speaks up first about they should be getting a whole share, whatever. And then Brett's like, yeah.
I love that little, I think it comes later when they're joking around and they're like, asking Brett, like, is all you do just agree with Parker? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I love you guys.
Yeah, I love Parker.
And also 100% support Parker and Brett. They're right. They should get, why is the engineering crew getting paid less?
Why
is that what they're, like, I support them. I feel like we're supposed to see them as like greedy or annoying or something.
No.
Or like, but I'm like, no, they are unionizing.
Yes.
And I love them.
Yeah. Parker is sticking up for workers' rights and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
They should be getting a whole share. Like they're the engineers. They're the ones who make the space, the ship go.
Just because they're not the officers and the fancy officer jobs.
Yeah.
They work below decks. They're like not getting, like, okay. I see how it is.
And I mean, like we've already been talking about it, but we can just establish the theme now that like, there's a theme in this movie about like exploitation and disregard for workers' well-being.
Yeah.
Just in the name of greater profits.
Yes. That's what this movie is basically about more than anything.
Basically more. Yeah. And I found a really great article. And one of the lines, the very last line, and it says, as in 1979, 2019, and also in 2122, which is when this movie takes place. Money is the ultimate goal, not workers' rights or their well-being.
Yeah. I also really... Later when Parker's like, okay, wait now though. We're cargo haulers.
Yeah.
What are we doing answering distress calls?
Call.
And I loved his point where he was like, we should get paid more for that.
Yep.
Like, yeah, hazard pay.
Hazard pay,
This
dude.
is a dangerous job. You're doing something dangerous. You should get paid more. But then Ash comes in like, oh no, there's a clause in the contract.
Oh yeah. Ash, the science officer, knows all the rules.
And I'm like, is there a clause in the contract?
Is there a clause in the contract,
Are you just
Ash?
saying that, Ash?
Yeah. But you could imagine knowing that Ash is an android that like
he's also a liar.
But he is a liar. That's true.
He's a big liar, android.
Because his primary directive is to get the alien, and whatever he needs to do to get that is acceptable. You're right.
And to get Parker to shut up about money and just be like,
Just do the thing.
Though I also believe that the company did put a clause in there that was like, you must respond to.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that the way that the company sold it was like very effective. Like, oh, well, you know, we just want to, if somebody needs our help, then like we should make sure to help them.
Doing that classic like company thing of like, we're so altruistic. We donate so much to charity to like whitewash what they're actually doing.
And it might be your job to go check out a distress signal that you're not trained to address.
I just, what I kept thinking, all right, I was like, they are not equipped to deal with this in any way.
And
Parker is right.
Parker's totally right. Yay workers. But yeah, I've been thinking about that and like media representations where people are like, we should get hazard pay or like want more money from their job. Like they are kind of seen as like scumbags.
I know. And I kind of got that vibe from this one too, especially since Parker is sort of often put against Ripley, who's like our hero.
Yeah, because Brett and Parker are the engineers. They hang out below deck.
Yeah. And they do kind of confront Ripley directly about it.
That's true.
And Ripley's like, everybody's going to get the share they deserve.
Well, that's right. You'll get what you're contractually obligated to your share.
Yeah.
You'll get what you deserve, which is a weird way to say that, Ripley, but.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So I feel like we're not supposed to like totally be on their side about it, but I'm like, no,
I am kind of totally on their side about it. Yeah.
Just because, you know, America hates unions.
Really, really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is interesting because, you know, Brett and Parker, they're best friends. They're standing up for workers' rights, and I love that for them. But, like, they also are dicks to Ripley.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't really understand that scene when she's down below deck and, like, hey, how much longer till we, like, what's going on? And, like, Parker's just turned on this steam vent, and there's, like, steam shooting, and it's very loud, you know, and...
just to get her to go away,
I was just like, but... she has a valid question for you.
I know. I saw one reading about it that was like, well, like the gender hierarchy stuff doesn't exist in this world, but what still does is that Ripley is so much younger than everybody else on the crew.
Okay.
And so they're sort of like not wanting to listen to her because she's like younger, and yet she's in this position of authority, and it's like they don't. And I'm like, are you sure?
I don't buy it.
You know, I mean, I guess if we go back to the original gender blind...
yeah.
then maybe, but also, I don't know. Or are they just kind of a little bit sexist and this isn't a genderless utopia?
Again, yeah, like, no, the patriarchy is alive and well in the Nostromo.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, so that was silly. I mean, I understand that they're upset because, like, well, first of all, not only are they not getting paid what they should, but this is now also taking more of their time.
Yes!
Which is a very, very valuable resource. And I'm sure only more so in the year 2122.
Yeah. And they were told that they were going to go to sleep and wake up back at home. And like, they're not at home.
And then they're fucking not. And they're like kind of far away, actually.
Eating company food. Yeah. That's the other thing that's interesting about the company is when Brett and Parker mostly, but other people are also talking about it, like the food that they're eating.
Is not good.
Yeah. And it's how it's like, at least it's food, you know, at least we got food. And it's like all specifically company food.
Yeah. Served by Mother.
Yes. Yep. And it's just like, oh, the company is your family.
Yep. So, and Brett is also the second one to die. And it takes a while between Kane's chestburster scene.
Yes. Of them trying to find where it went and what's going on.
Because that gives the alien time to grow and mature. Yeah.
And shed its skin, which looked gross.
And
shed, the little shedding. I hate shed skin. It's icky.
So Brett, it's a super effective and like very much a scene from a horror movie.
Yes.
They do the like here kitty kitty scene where he's looking for the cat because they need to go get Jones because Brett let Jones run away.
Because he was like, it's just a cat, so who cares?
And Ripley's like, no, go get the goddamn cat. I think Parker's also like, go get the cat.
Yeah, because otherwise they're just going to keep finding the cat instead of the alien.
And yeah, so once we know where the cat is, then.
I wonder, does Jones also go into a little hibernation, cryosleep? Yes. Was Jones also waking up during this distress call just to be the ship cat? I love that they have a ship pet. I mean, I assume it's on like ships at sea, you would often have a cat for rats.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's the
same. My understanding having a cat on a ship is good luck.
Yeah, and good for morale, certainly.
Why wouldn't that just stay the same as the ships become outer spaceships?
But it's never really explained. They're just like, and here's a cat.
And here's Jonesy. Don't even worry about it.
Everybody loves Jonesy.
But Brett gets killed after looking for the cat. Yeah. Plenty of suspense. The alien comes out of the air duct and gets him. And what's fantastic is that Jonesy the cat sees the entire thing.
Yes. Jonesy knows all.
Jonesy the cat is my best supporting actress of this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just read something about how they like had a German Shepherd behind a sheet or something when they needed Jonesy to be happy, and then they're like, "Sheet's gone. Here's a German Shepherd," and Jonesy would be like, "Rah!" Get him to hiss.
Yeah, because we do get to see basically the entire thing like through the eyes of Jonesy.
Yeah.
Like she's being called and she doesn't give a fuck because she knows that there's an alien. And she's like, Brett can fucking die. I don't care.
Cats.
Yeah, very.
Like, I will stay right where I am. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm safe here.
I had a great hiding spot in that locker. You made me leave it.
Yeah. Now I'm mad. So Brett gets killed second. And yes, I actually did pause how long it takes for us to see the alien.
Yeah.
And it's a while. It's like an hour and 7 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
That's when we see like the alien. However,
the adults.
The adults, yeah. The xenomorph,
Its final
if you will.
form.
This is technically not its final form, but as far as in this movie, that as far as we know, it is the final form.
Yeah. And even then, we don't really see like, I mean, we don't ever, that's what they talk about in this film in the same way that Jaws and the shark, the effectiveness of not really showing everything or just giving the hints of things.
Yeah.
Or like never really seeing the alien straight head on, you know? We see it like from a side angle, or we see its like silhouette, or we see just like a tendril of it.
And like very, very little of it in the beginning, and then it kind of starts to ramp up. We see it more and more towards the end. But I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like less than 5 minutes of alien in this movie.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think I read something about that.
Including face hugger, chest burster.
Yeah, it's
egg.
like you could count it on one hand. The amount of minutes of alien in this.
So then after Brett dies, technically the next person to die is Dallas, but you were just telling me that technically in the director's cut.
Yeah. He maybe doesn't die. He's maybe being saved to be like a future, either like the next thing to get impregnated or as food for later or something.
Right.
That like maybe he's being kept. Or that people are somehow used to be made into the eggs or something. I don't know. I didn't watch that cut.
Neither did I.
Ridley Scott himself said that the original theatrical release is
the one.
And they only did the director's cut to be like, we did have these other ideas. Here they are.
Mm-hmm. So then I guess after that, Dallas dies.
Yeah.
And I wrote down he dies because Lambert can't give directions.
Oh, that's not how I read that.
Okay.
I read that as he dies because he thought he needed to be the hero. Because Ripley's like, yeah, I'll go. And she's like, no,
that. But then, like, he's in the ducts.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, which way do I go? Which way do I go?
But
and Lambert's like, go that way. And I'm like, Lambert, that doesn't mean anything.
But, like, in her defense, the technology she has is like, oh, it's right there. No, wait, I just lost it. No, wait, it's over there. Like, the technology is not supporting her either. Technology probably made by Ash.
Probably.
Right? Is that the same tracker thing or a different tracker?
Not a clue. But, yeah, I mean, we can just assume all technology on this ship is working together.
Maintained by Ash.
Yeah.
And Mother.
Okay, that's fair. But, like, you're right. It kind of goes like, oh, it's over there. Oh, wait, it's over here. And then it's...
But she does tell him to run without really giving a direction
because
of which way
he could
to
go
run.
a couple of ways.
Yeah.
He could even go up.
Yeah.
And so, and then she's like, not that way, the other way. And I'm like, okay, but there's 3 ways he can go, Lambert. So when you say not that way, the other way, that doesn't narrow it down.
Is fair.
And this is what makes me mad at Lambert, because I think, like, as a character, she doesn't do anything.
She is quote unquote hysterical.
She's very hysterical.
She's given written to be a woman,
very,
despite the fact that the script is supposed to be gender neutral.
Yes.
I'm like, I feel like a man wrote you to be a woman.
But to be a woman, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, once again, I think that comes down to like, yeah, they're basic kind of blue collar workers. They're not trained for like this level of what they're doing. And like that really shows up in Dallas, where he has that moment of like, no, it's cool, I'm gonna be the hero.
Yes.
Like he is some sort of military captain.
Yeah.
And like he isn't.
He's the captain, but he's not like a military captain.
No, he's just like the ship captain.
He's just he's just the sovereign of the space truckers.
Yeah. Which is a weird authority to have. I do like he has that one line that I think says a lot about his character. When they're talking about like why they're doing things the way that they're doing things, he says that's what the company wants to happen.
Yes.
Standard procedure is to do whatever the hell they tell you to do.
Yeah.
So that just sort of like says a lot about who he is and how he operates, I think.
He's basically the ship admin.
Yeah.
Okay.
He gets up against the alien and it's like he can't even do anything.
Yeah.
I don't even know what their plan was, just to lure it a certain way and then trap it.
Yeah, I think.
It's very unclear to me what their plan was in that moment, other than to just send Dallas to his death. But, you know, I realize they do have the problem of it has acidic blood, so they can't really harm it.
That is a fun little thing.
Which I feel like they should have emphasized more, maybe, or something.
Definitely. And they do in future films.
Yeah.
But again, this is the one we're talking about. Yeah, and then actually in that scene where Ash cuts it and it does bleed acid, like, I always forget that xenomorphs have acid blood. I always forget.
That seems like such a big deal.
It's kind of a big deal.
Big reason for, like, why... I mean, it gives Ash sort of, like, a little bit of cover when the baby erupts from the chest, when he's like, no, don't hurt it. Mm-hmm. It would have been a great place to add a line of, like, no, don't hurt it. Because its blood might be acid and burn us all, you know? Not because, you know?
Not because I need it for other things.
And like, oh, we have to trap it because we can't just go in there guns blazing.
Right. The traditional ways of warfare are not going to work with this enemy.
Yeah, I feel like that's there, but it's not really emphasized. So I like kept being like, why are they? Oh, right, acid blood. Acid blood. But yeah, no, that just, for Dallas. I mean, I saw some readings about, just sort of like, as we've been saying, the sort of unisex nature of the crew, their genderlessness, and how that's like kind of, this is a moment where it's like apparent, where Dallas tries to kind of take on that masculine hero role.
Yes. He's got a cowboy hat and everything, I think.
Does he? Or is his name just Dallas?
I think his name's just Dallas, and I think I might be confusing him with...
What's his name for the thing?
Yes. Grady. McCready.
McCready,
yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, no, he goes in like...
Or is his name just Dallas? Anyway. What about him? I'm sorry.
I don't even remember. Just that he tries to be a masculine hero. And
he does.
But he can't because he's, you know, he's
a trucker.
He is made less manly by the fact that the women are less womanly.
Oh, yes.
Some of those readings.
Yes.
When the genders become equal.
Yes.
Then perhaps the greater qualities of the man can no longer be expressed and he becomes lacking.
Oh.
And I don't know, Freud, penis envy, blah, blah, blah.
Sure, whatever. Yeah. It is interesting, like, all of the characters, it's so weird, like, how sexual this movie is, but the human characters are
so sexless.
Sexless. And it's interesting, like, is it because of the lack of gender when writing the characters? Because if you don't know what sex you are, how do you know what sex you're supposed to be attracted to?
Yes! I also saw, so many great behind the scenes things. Where to begin? One is that there was going to be a sex scene between Ripley and Dallas.
No.
I know, wrong.
No.
But not as in they're into each other, but as in like they're long haulers.
They
gotta get the energy out.
Yeah.
Like they just like nothing.
They're just humans with basic human needs.
And then there was also they considered for a little bit having something sort of suggested between Ripley and Lambert because they have moments where they're sort of like supporting each other and like holding hands, and they're like, we could push that farther, but they didn't.
Nah.
And then finally, the Veronica Cartwright, who plays Lambert, has said that they talked about how maybe her and Dallas were like having an affair or something, and that's why she gets so like she really breaks down after Dallas dies and like can't do anything after that point because she like loved Dallas or something.
And then you think she'd be able to give him better instructions.
I know.
Anyway.
So there are like all these opportunities where they're almost like, let's put sex into this.
Yes.
Let's put like romantic interest.
Yeah.
Let's put something in there. And each turn they were like, no. The alien is the only sexual being in this film.
And that sex is very dangerous.
Yeah. Like sex is dangerous. We're not going to show any sort of like healthy or even neutral sex in this film. We're just going to be,
that
but I
leads
do
to
love
death.
the idea of them.
But it's not a slasher though.
No, yes. Yeah, but I just love that they almost had a little, I don't know, polyamorous thing happening. The other thing I love is that I guess in a later film, or no, in the Legacy Alien Legacy box set or whatever, where they had some more behind the scenes stuff, they had like character bios for their characters. I guess Ridley Scott wrote a lot of backstory for their characters that the actors looked at and stuff. But one of the things just sort of randomly mentioned, I have not seen this, I've only heard this on the internet. One of the things mentioned on the gender for, or sex, I guess, they probably would have used the word sex.
They would have used the word sex. I have feelings about that, but I want you to finish.
Dallas and Lambert
Yes.
are alluded to being transgender. Like Lambert male to female and Dallas female to male.
Dallas is a trans man and Lambert's a trans
woman. Yeah.
And how is that indicated in the
I don't remember. I
notes?
should have written it down. I should have written it
I
down.
understand.
But it was something like reassigned male or something like that.
Oh.
It's something that and then they changed it later because there were like some outrage about it or something. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Where instead then they changed it to something else sort of vague but with implications.
Yeah.
Where there was like male naturalized or something like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my God. I know that's not a part of the original script, but okay.
That's definitely some really interesting sci-fi stuff.
Right, because it implies like, oh, in the future, gender doesn't matter, and yet also it does enough that people are are choosing to transition.
Right.
So like gender still matters to the individual, and yet also it doesn't.
Well, and this movie really does equate sex and gender.
Right.
And I think that's just the 1979 of it all.
Right, yeah.
But again, since there is like the lack of regard for gender in the writing of the characters, which how much of a disregard is there for, because like we're talking about Lambert, I'm like, I think she was written to be a woman.
The other thing is that I also heard, there was like the original writer and his partner, who I think did a lot of writing.
Dan O'Bannon.
And whoever Dan O'Bannon was working with, I didn't write it down.
Somebody with not that cool of a name.
Yeah. And then there were like a lot of things then got added later by like some writer producer people that were involved in it. I know one of the names was like Walter Hill and somebody else, and that's actually where like the whole mother company Ash being a robot storyline came from, was actually like later in the script. And the other thing I saw is that some of the dialogue was like improvised, started to make it feel more natural in the moment. So I am wondering, like, sure, maybe the original script was like gender neutral, but at one point did they know, okay, but Lambert is a woman. Okay, but they had this thought of having Dallas be a woman because it'd be cool to have a woman who's a captain.
Yeah.
But then they also knew that Ripley was the one who was going to live. So they're like, well, Ripley needs to be a woman. Why that meant they couldn't both be women, I don't know.
Absolutely
So like
not.
at a certain point, gender decisions were made.
Yes.
And like, I don't know how much then the script originally being unisex still matters. Another thing I found interesting, speaking of like Veronica Cartwright, who plays Lambert, she initially wanted to play and like auditioned for Ripley.
Yes.
Yes.
I heard that. Yep.
And that she didn't realize that she was Lambert until she was like on set and basically
like got her lines for the day.
Yeah.
And
I was just like, oh, that sucks. I mean, Hollywood, I guess.
Lambert.
No, but that like she had a hard time connecting with Lambert at first because she was like, this is just like an emotional wreck of a woman. Like, what am I doing? And she has said, quote, they convinced me that I was the audience's fears. I was a reflection of what the audience is feeling. So it's like she's not the emotion character. Like she's frustrating to watch because she is our fears, but also the fact that they wanted the character representing our fears to be played by a woman is like because we only want to see women be scared, as we've talked about with like slasher films and The Final Girl and all of that is sort of like, I don't know.
Meanwhile, like Ripley is the one who is mirroring my fears and like what I'm thinking while I'm watching this, which is like, why aren't you doing anything?
Oh, I thought it was about where's the cat?
Where's the cat? And also,
guys,
why is everybody not doing doing the opposite of what they should be doing?
Yeah. I do, though. I mean, Lambert does do a thing that I have said before that I support, which is I actually do appreciate when horror movies show a freeze response. Because I just think it's realistic. I just think it's realistic.
And honestly,
it's frustrating, but realistic.
That is, you know what? You are 100% right, because what frustrates me the most about Lambert is how she does literally nothing.
Yeah.
And Parker dies trying to save her.
Yeah.
She could have taken that opportunity to run away. She literally just stands there and screams. And that makes me mad. But you're totally right. Like, when I enter FFF, like, freeze is usually the one I go for.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's not logical, but that's the point.
Really good point. Yeah, good point.
But the fact, that's focused on one of two women characters.
Yep.
So we have the guy's gal of Ripley, who's like very androgynous and very like take charge and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we have the sort of, emotional.
Yeah. Which, causes her death.
And and you're right. She's not very good at explaining things, like kind of causes other people's death too because of her not being able to pick up the slack, kind of.
Yeah, and we don't really get to see because she's the navigator, and like we don't really ever get to see her navigate.
She does a little bit. She's the one who's like, oh, we're this far away from Earth.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like, oh, this planet is here. We're in the Solomon system or something.
But like Ripley already knew that.
Yeah.
She's like, I told you it's not our system.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, fuck Lambert then. So after Dallas dies, technically the next death is Parker, who's killed trying to save Lambert.
Yeah.
But in between those two scenes, we also get the reveal that Ash is not a human.
And his death.
And he technically kind of dies.
I kind of forgot about him dying.
Yes.
He's a robot, but he doesn't die there.
He dies, and then it's really funny. They like bring him back and get like a confession. Like,
sort of, yeah.
what D&D spell is that? Communicate with the dead?
Oh, yeah, speak with dead.
Speak with dead?
Where you could ask 3 questions
Yes,
or whatever.
It's almost kind of what happens.
And they may or may not tell the truth, you know?
Yeah, especially fucking Ash, man.
God. I know, Ash is so annoying throughout. Like, before you know... I mean, I knew watching it that he was a robot or whatever. But, like, without knowing it, yeah, that tension of, like, he's just awful.
What a dick.
Like, he keeps undermining Ripley.
Yes.
And he keeps being the reason, like...
He's breaking rules. He's the science officer.
He's opening the quarantine when he shouldn't.
Yeah.
He was the one when Ripley realizes, oh no, it's not a distress call. It's a warning. Yeah. I should go warn them that this is something bad. He's like, no. By the time you get there, it'll be too late. So what's the point? It's like, no, let her go. Like he's just like, yeah, and then letting Kane out, like being like, no, don't kill it.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my God, Ash, what is wrong with you?
Right.
And it's like, oh, you're a robot.
He's a robot. And he's working in the best interest of the company.
Yeah.
So like while the quote unquote company is like this sort of nebulous conglomerate of all of these things.
It's just called the company.
It gets to be represented in this movie as a character.
Yeah.
In Ash.
Yeah.
And also Mother too.
Right. Yeah. Because Mother is a character, just a brief one.
Yeah. And she's also
the company.
Company. Yeah. Ash just, I think, has one of the most interesting lines, because Ash does kind of represent the company,
yes,
and then therefore the capitalism of it all, right. And one of Ash's, like, as he's about to like shut down again or whatever, he's like kind of I don't know how to talk. He's like fetishizing this alien.
He's very interesting. He thinks the alien is so cool.
Yeah, he's like, it's
perfect killing machine.
This is like, the quote he has, which is just fascinating to me. It's unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
Wow. We want that?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, as a company we do, but...
And it's
so anti-human.
It's so anti-human. It's like reducing down humanity to biology.
Yes.
And like
efficiency.
Yes. And the ideal, being held up as the ideal or superior to humans. Like the alien is superior to humans because of its lack of humanity and conscience.
Yeah, its lack of morality. And I also noticed that he refers to it as like it having purity.
Purity.
And I'm like, really? You're going to use that word?
You're going to use that word? It's got acid blood, dude.
You're just coming off a little Nazi-esque.
It's giving eugenics, and I don't love it. Which actually, like, is really a big part of the Alien franchise.
Eugenics?
Well,
kind of
selective breeding.
That makes sense. Yeah,
I want to talk about that, but hold on, not yet. Okay, because also it's worth noting that, like, a lack of conscience and like a lack of remorse and a lack of, an understanding of quote unquote morality is like also Sigmund Freud's definition of the id. Oh.
And this movie is very Freudian.
It's very Freudian. And I think I just want to make it known that Katie's the one who brought up Freud first.
I did.
It's usually me. Today, it's Katie.
Well, there's a lot of
womb envy.
Yeah.
Penis envy.
The penis, the lacking. And
there's a lot of ego versus id stuff happening.
Just the phallic imagery and the womb imagery and just all of it and the mother.
And Mother. Yep, absolutely. So
it's a lot of Freud.
Freud's got his hands all over this for sure. So that was just a really interesting quote from Ash to be like, okay, well, we see what your values are.
Yeah.
Right? And
especially coming from a character who like we sort of see initially as like the science offer who should be driven by like logic
and rationale.
Yeah.
Like men are supposed to be.
Right. Yes. Well, that's another thing you're talking about, like lack of masculinity, he's like literally revealed to be not a man.
Yeah, he's not even,
and we can get into the scene of him committing a act of sexual assault later.
Oh my God, that was so fucking crazy.
We will talk about that when we get to the sexuality stuff, because that scene's fucking insane. I do want to say one thing that I do like about Ash.
Yes.
Which is that one time we see him alone and he does a little jog in place. He just randomly does a little jog in place. He like warms his little robot arms up. You don't know.
Yeah, why does he do that? Yeah.
I think it has to be like, oh, he's weird or something. Yeah. Or like a clue that he's a robot or something. I don't know, but he just does a little.
Yeah, that's that crazy scene. So if we go back to the Death Order here, we get Ash is revealed to not be human, and then Parker is because Parker and Lambert go off to do something, get something so they can escape.
Yeah,
but the alien finds them first, and the alien
they need like oxygen or coolant or something for the life preservation on the escape shuttle.
Yeah, which okay, that makes sense. I'm with you. And then the alien finds them first and is going after Lambert, and then Parker jumps, kind of gets in the way, and is killed trying to save Lambert. And then we've already talked about Lambert's freeze response.
Yeah.
I said her, I have my little death order and like the name and then the cause of death. So it's like Kane, chest burster.
Oh,
yeah. Lambert just kind of standing there.
Baby.
Screaming.
Yeah. Because we don't really know what happened to her. We can talk about that specific death later during sexuality stuff too.
Right. And then we have Ripley and Jones are our final girls.
Yes. Jones is a final girl.
Yep.
A final cat.
Yep. A final cat. Yes.
Yeah. And then talk about a character who is driven by logic in the way that, our science officer should be, or also our captain Dallas should be. Like, Dallas often is sort of led by his emotions, like when he tells the engineers, like, oh, we need to take off now, even though it's not all the way fixed. It's because he's like feeling uncomfy, not because he's worried about their safety.
Right.
So, and then we have Ripley being like, no, we have rules. I'm not letting you in. We're quarantined. Like, no, we're not ready to take off until the engineers say the ship's ready. Like, she's like, from the beginning throughout, she's the one who's like, no, you guys, you're being stupid.
Yeah.
Let's be logical about this. We really don't see her get emotional.
She's also not concerned about getting a full share.
Yeah.
Right. She's just like, you're contractually obligated to your share.
That's easy for you to say when you get paid more than they do.
Yeah, right.
But
how much is that share?
Yeah,
and what does that get you in planet Earth in 2122?
Yeah. But yeah, I'm not sure if we ever see her. Like, she's talked a lot as being this like strong badass character, and I think that's because people are more thinking of Aliens.
Yes.
Because I'm not sure she's really strong and badass, but she is. I mean, she is strong.
She is strong,
and she sticks to her guns.
And she does like that entire last act.
Yeah.
When she's in the
when
escape
gets over
thing, and she thinks it's over, and it's not. Like, she fucking rocks it, man. She makes it happen.
And I do like that she, rather than get like overly emotional or something, that she controls herself and just like sings herself a little song.
I love that. Yes.
Like, compared to Lambert, that's like how you should respond when you're scared or something. The ideal of how to handle a stressful situation or like a life or death situations is to be like Ripley. No, and then it sucks that because Ripley's the only one who's actually sort of thinking about logic, that she's the one who has to keep being the bad guy.
Yes.
Which actually is kind of woman and
very
mother coded.
Yep.
Of like, she has to be the one who like goes down and tells Parker, like, dude, shut up about the sheriff.
Yeah.
And she has to be the one who's like, I know Kane might be dying, but protocol.
Yeah. It might be all of us, which will be a bigger deal than just Kane.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's like Ash gets to just keep making detrimental decisions over and over again, and like nobody cares except for Ripley pretty much.
Yeah.
But Ripley does like just suggest something, and they're like, Ripley, shut up. I don't know. Her character's interesting.
Yeah.
It's sort of like where she fits in pulp culture. She's such a like larger than life figure.
She really is.
And then you watch her and she's sort of like, yeah, she's there.
I think she's just like, one of those characters that people kind of put whatever they want onto. And so she means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Yeah. And she does develop and grow throughout the franchise.
Absolutely.
So, like, I'm not speaking to the rest of the franchise where I think that's,
Yeah, I found, we'll talk about this later when we get into themes, but I found a really interesting article that just kind of, among the other claims that like Ripley is gender nonconforming.
Oh, yeah.
And what
which
was
is interesting.
really interesting to me about Ripley is that she is the final girl, even though this is not a slasher.
Yeah.
And she does also have a psycho killer,
Yeah.
the alien.
And they have that final confrontation there together.
Yes. That also spans several different films.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very final girl.
I guess if we want to talk about one last character, kind of.
Okay.
The ship. The Nostromo.
Right. The Nostromo is kind of its own character.
Yeah. Especially when you consider mother part of the ship.
Yes.
Yes. So that is my very weak segue into
Literary corner.
Yeah. So Nostromo. Okay, so this is sort of a literary corner about how I thought I'd find something cool, and then I didn't really find anything that cool, which
You can't win them all.
you can't win them all. But it's still kind of interesting. So the name of the spaceship stood out to me, Nostromo.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was Latin for something. That
Fair.
was my first feeling. But apparently it's the name of a Joseph Conrad novel.
Okay.
Nostromo,
Yeah.
which is about a foreman in like a fictional South American country.
Okay.
And Nostromo does translate to like shipmate or bosun,
Okay.
which is the person on the ship who like supervises the other crew members and is like the third hand. So that feels kind of Ripley-esque, maybe, high up, but not all the way high up, like above the other rank and file in a commanding position, but not like the commander.
Right.
So I don't know.
Two
Maybe
other
there's
people
something
have
there.
to be off the ship before she's in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not really. And then I did find out that there were a bunch of other references to Conrad's work throughout the series. Like the escape ship that they get on is called the Narcissus, which is a Joseph Conrad novella.
Okay.
It's actually called the N-word of the Narcissus.
Oh, no. Why?
I don't know. But anyway, yeah. The ship from Aliens is the Sulaco, which is the name of the town where Nostromo takes place.
Okay.
Alien 3 has a ship called the Patna, which is like a ship in a different book, Lord Jim, that he wrote. And it's like there's a bunch of them like throughout the series. And I was like, oh, there's something here, obviously. What's all this Conrad about? And like basically, probably it's just that Ridley Scott is a big Conrad fan.
Okay.
Like it's kind of unclear if he was the one who named the ship because that there was that one writer producer who came in later and like did a bunch of rewrites, Walter Hill. He like takes credit for the idea.
Okay.
But I don't know. I saw one thing talking about how he often took credit for a lot of things. So it's like, are we sure he actually did that? Or especially since Ridley Scott has a clearer connection to Conrad's work because his first directorial like credit was for The Duelist, which was an adaptation of a Conrad work.
Oh, shit.
So it seems like Conrad was kind of like a Ridley Scott thing already.
Okay.
So it could be all his idea or like in honor of
Ridley
him, or
Scott
who knows?
doesn't own Joseph Conrad.
Right,
Somebody
yeah.
else could
So
be.
like
Yeah.
who knows? So who knows? But basically if we're believing Hill's story about it, then the name of Nostromo was chosen because it sounds cool.
It does sound cool.
But like that just so disappointed
But
me.
do you know what Nostromo made me think of?
What?
It made me think of... hold on. What's the name of the whale in Pinocchio?
Oh, I have no idea. Does it have a name like that?
Monstro!
Oh, Monstro. I thought it was going to be Latin for like us, like Nostromo.
Yeah, Nostromo is us, yeah.
Apparently it could maybe be, it's similar to the Italian Nostromo, which is like
and then
our man.
Then it also made me think of Nostradamus,
Oh, yeah.
which
That's
I
a
don't
good one.
think it... I don't think there's anything
And
there.
his name just means Our Lady.
I love it.
Nostradamus. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it just sounded cool, and I was kind of hoping that there was more of a reason behind it, like all of that Conrad stuff. And I'm going to choose to believe that it was more like Ridley Scott inspired, or like, I don't know, that maybe the reason he was drawn to the Alien script is because it had a lot of the similar like themes and vibes that drew him towards Conrad's work.
Yeah, is Conrad like a sci-fi writer?
No. I mean, he's Heart of Darkness. He wrote Heart of Darkness. He writes that kind of shit.
Like history.
Yeah, kind of history. Well, like Nostromo, I guess I should have said this
fiction?
first. Nostromo takes place in a fictional South American country,
Okay.
but it's very much based on like imperialism that was happening there,
Historical
dictatorships that were happening there. Yeah,
Yeah.
like actual things that were going on, but like fictionalized.
Yeah.
I did find one interesting article by a man named Ted Billy, which is...
An amazing name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing
Yeah.
that. I was like, how do I put into words how amazing this name is?
Ted Billy.
Like,
Tell
first
me
name, last name?
everything about Ted Billy.
I love a first name, last name. Yeah. Apparently, there is like a whole journal called Conradiana or something like that. That's just about like Conrad's work. So Ted Billy wrote A Curious Case of Influence, Nostromo and Aliens. And he sort of talks about how there is actually a lot of thematic things that connect the novel Nostromo to the Alien series. He mostly talks about Alien and aliens, but he talks about how it's basically what it comes down to is the dehumanization of mankind by materialism. Because what Nostromo really is about is like this guy who owns a silver mine is like basically helping prop up a dictator just so that he can keep his silver mine going. And when the revolutionaries come in, he hires Nostromo to like smuggle his silver out. And Nostromo's supposed to be incorruptible, but he's like turns out not to be, and he like starts stealing the silver for himself, and it's just a book about like greed. And I liked this sort of to sum up Ted Billy's main point in his own words. Beyond the conspicuous references to the Nostromo, the Sulaco, and the Narcissus, the two science fiction films show the influence of Conrad in their expression of the universal theme of the destructiveness of self-aggrandizement. Dramatizing human existence as a competitive struggle to survive, Nostromo demonstrates that the greatest enemy comes from within, from each character's innate selfishness, pride, or greed. Similarly, the creatures in Alien and Aliens, embodiments of the company's lust for profit, burst forth from the insides of their victims. In all three works, the selfish craving for possessions breeds monsters, either metaphorical or actual.
Whoa, man.
So that was a very good article that made me feel better about the name of the ship being Nostromo. I was like, ooh, it is deep, kind of. There is meat on that bone.
Yeah.
There's also stuff about Conrad writing a lot about, like, betrayals and, like, things like that, and which kind of ties in with, like, Ash and all of that sort of, like, secret betrayal stuff. And, like, but yeah, mostly just that thing about, like, yeah, the greed coming from within and the alien being an embodiment of the company's greed that literally bursts through the chest of one of the characters. I was just like, oh, snaps for Ted Billy.
And destroys everything in its path.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's literally the extent of my literary corner, because I thought there'd be more meat on this bone than there is, and there really wasn't.
Hey, man,
but
that's
it's still kind of cool. It's still kind of interesting. So, I did think...
I think we have a lot to say about the themes.
Right, yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Now that we've established our characters.
And with this literary corner, I just sort of wanted to start us off talking about one of the main themes, which is just like the capitalist greed that exists in this, and how the alien is sort of like an embodiment of that. Ash does represent the company in a lot of ways, but like the alien itself also is sort of like capitalism in a lot of ways.
Yes. And like even its like gestation and life cycle, like it's parasitic and it requires the death of other life forms in order to sustain itself and reproduce.
Like Dan.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Yep.
And it keeps like growing to a point that it can't like sustain itself.
Yeah, like I mean, it's all there. We've been talking about it this entire time, right? With Brett and Parker, you know, talking about how they deserve, you know, extra money for this extra duty that they're being forced to do.
But the contract says
to being able to get, you know, an equal share with all of the officers.
And like what it really comes down to is that like, I guess like the fact that the big sort of like twist in this film, like yes, we're dealing with this alien and we don't know what the alien is going to do next because it keeps like changing its form or whatever, like metamorphizing or whatever. But like the big twist in the film is the discovery that Ash is a robot.
Yes.
And that the company sent in a new directive to like the ship and to Ash that like is like, get this alien organism, no matter what, ignore all other priorities. Crew is expendable.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, labor is expendable in the vein of capitalism.
Yep.
Like capital does not care about the safety of labor in the face
and
of
like
profit.
how the alien itself is capital.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a good.
It's a good. It's literally they're treating it as a good.
Yep.
Like that is and like on top of that, having it be like that they want it for their military division. So it's like this actual violent capitalism wasn't enough. It's also in service to this imperialism, as it often is. It's like, oh my God, I get it. I get what you're saying. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yes.
I don't even know what else we can say about it.
This is like it's all Reagan's fault before Reagan even gets elected.
Yeah, this is like one of those things, like, there's like those jokes about how the main plot, like, of Josie and the Pussycats when that movie came out.
Yes, it's corporations. Yeah.
And it's like that they're using, or wait, is it that one or is it Charlie's Angels where they're using the phones to spy on their own people? Using our phones to spy on us. And it's like, can you imagine such a horrible future where this would take place?
That happens.
And it's like, oh, that's happening
Lord.
now.
That also happens in Dark Knight.
Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, can you imagine? I feel like maybe that's one of those moments of like, can you imagine capitalist greed getting so out of hand that they'd allow an alien to kill everybody? It's like, well, yeah.
Actually,
I can pretty easily imagine that future is the now times.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's just sort of what COVID was. Oh, I know, and I couldn't stop thinking. This is probably brought up in Aliens, but I couldn't stop thinking during like the ending when Ripley's like, "We're gonna blow up the ship. We're gonna blow this alien out of here." I'm like, the company is gonna. Oh God, they're gonna fucking
be
burn
so
you
mad.
alive. They're gonna be so mad at you. They don't want you back.
Yeah,
they don't give a shit about you. You're gonna be in trouble, girl.
Yeah, probably some bullshit in your contract.
Yeah,
like allows you to be prosecuted for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be like you owe us money
Yeah.
for the ship that you destroyed and the ore that was lost
and the we'll just call the alien priceless.
Right.
So
you owe us forever. That's my prediction for Aliens. But I feel like, we've already kind of covered it a lot.
What I really interested in this film is, yes, there's like the capitalist greed that comes out of the desire to continue the evolution of technological advances.
Yeah.
And also how those two things intersect with sexuality and gender.
Yeah.
And like how I really just feel what this movie is talking about is like, how do we make humans unhuman? Which like means taking away, like, how do I say this? Like they want the max productive. They want like workers that are like max efficient, max productive. They have no humanity. They want reproduction.
Yes.
Without motherhood.
Yes.
So like they're kind of, in a way, this sci-fi could be conceived as a way of an attempt to get rid of women.
Yeah. But then that becomes a different anxiety of like, if women aren't there to reproduce, then does that labor then fall to men?
Right.
Which is then why we have Cain's birthing scene.
Yes.
And it all is connected.
Yes, very much so. So I just found this really fantastic article by, the author's name is Michaela Barton.
Love it.
How Alien Queered the Binaries of Traditional Gender. And again, it's just like the whole time I was reading it was just like final girl, right? So like the main conflict that drives Ripley's story revolves around, and the author uses the pronouns they them to refer to Ripley, like just as, like
Ripley is a non-binary
icon. Yes.
As we mentioned, this is our Pride episode.
It is.
It's our Pride episode. This is like trans icons, Dallas and Lambert, NB icon.
Yeah, Ripley.
Get
into it. So,
and also NB icon or gender fluid icon, the alien.
True. That's true.
We'll get there.
Hold on. So the main conflicts driving Ripley's story revolves around their refusal to fit neatly into boxes of motherhood and seductress.
Oh.
Right. So earlier in the article, they kind of, we do establish the, cultural dichotomy of women as either Madonnas or whores.
Right.
But Michaela Barton uses the term like mother or seductress.
Oh, okay.
Which
is mother.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
The alien is monstrous. Is a monstrous exaggeration of traditional female qualities from a restricted misogynistic perspective. She is literally a baby boomer whose purpose can be reduced down to her biology.
Yeah.
Right? The alien forces a stage of motherhood onto her victims.
Mm-hmm.
They take on the incubation phase
of
gestation, right? And they become a surrogate for her spawn. If we regard the alien as a twisted representation of femininity, then Ripley's prolonged fight against this creature can represent their continual refusal to assimilate into the supposed binary.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, in general, the mother stuff that I know gets developed more later in the series, but even just in this film, like the fact the obvious fact of their ship being referred to as Mother.
The ship's computer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, for motherboard? Like, what? Or are they just really clear-eyed about the fact that, like, this ship has such a mothering presence and the company is all one big family? Like, I don't know. But it just sort of was like, why do we want technology to parent us?
Yeah, right.
Like, and I think it does come down to, like, yeah, it's that idea of making humans less human.
Yeah, getting rid of that pesky consciousness and morality. Like, what has it done for me lately?
And, like, if we could just have computers be mothers and sort of take care of all that stuff, and, like we already talked about, that sort of clean, pristine womb of them waking up from their slumbers and all of that, of just sort of, like, I don't know, we just really want, like, we think technology is better than us.
Yes. And that, like, emotion is to our detriment.
Yeah. Which then has this interesting tension with Ripley, who also kind of has that vibe of, like, emotion is to our detriment.
Yeah.
And also, though, is, like,
that's what fucking killed Lambert.
Yeah. And then in contrast, we have, like, the alien, who is, like, also a mother figure, but is more, like, forcing motherhood onto others. And it's just, like, they're saying a lot. And also the fact that Ash looks like he's leaking milk. Like, it looks like milk to me.
Or semen.
I know. I saw some people saying that too.
Yeah, but for Katie's mind would see milk.
Well, yeah, because it's like the motherhood thing.
But why is it white?
I don't know. That's just what his fluids are.
Couldn't it just be? I don't know. It's supposed to take place in the future, wouldn't you? It's fine. It doesn't need to be red, but like, I don't know. Could it be like black or oily or something?
Yeah, but instead it looks to me like milk. Though I guess semen works too, because either way, we're talking about reproduction being relocated onto technology and being taken away from biology, and then we have this like fierce biological monster, or kind of some people called it biomechanical, because it has that kind of technology look to it. It kind of looks got
tubes coming out of it. It's chromy,
like, yeah. That like then we have this we have this contrast between like, if we take motherhood away from women, then it has to be forced upon men, or like, is there any way to get it away from humans entirely, and then what do humans become? And then like, here comes biology to like reassert itself or something violently. And also when Ash refers to the alien as Cain's son, did you catch that? I was just like, first off, giving biblical.
I was just like Cain and Abel Cain?
Yeah, like, okay. Yeah, but like,
well, it is interesting that that's Cain's name.
Yeah, but also like, why are you gendering this alien right now? Why is it Cain's son?
Why is it a son? Yeah,
Cain's child, Cain's daughter. Like, that was such a weird.
Because I was looking into like the gender of the xenomorphs, the aliens themselves, and the only ones who really seem to have any gender is like the xenomorph queen,
right?
The one who lays the eggs,
who isn't even a thing in this movie yet.
Well, yeah, it doesn't show up till Aliens.
Yeah.
So like, the only way that we can understand gender in these xenomorphs is that they basically don't have any, except for the queen.
And yet there's that tension between the crew, like how we talked about, how they're very like genderless and sexless.
Yeah.
And like kind of sterile and don't have that reproduction and all of that.
Yes.
And then this alien who is somehow not any gender, or maybe more accurately all genders.
Right.
Is like very kind of like sexual, like sexually aggressive.
Yes.
Like it orally assaults Cain and impregnates him. Like that is a rape.
It's a rape. Yep.
Imagery. And then like it turns birth into that act of like bloody destruction rather than creation.
I mean, just like even the way it's like, it's kind of an arachnid because it doesn't have 8.
Oh, does it? Yeah, I don't know. It has something like that.
4 legs on each side, and then
it's 3 or 4.
Weird little tail. I think it's 4. Anyway,
it's very insectoid or
very insectoid. Like the way that it kind of wraps around his mouth with like the 4. It
looks like fingers.
It's like a hand covering his mouth.
Yeah.
It very much is like sexual assault imagery.
Yes,
it's pretty intense. Yep. And then he wakes up and Parker's like, "How you doing, man?
Come on in. Come have a meal."
And then Kane's like, "I'm great. Someone ask another stupid question."
Yeah, no, I don't know. I have a lot to say about like the sexuality in this film, but let's not do what the film does and conflate sex with gender too much.
It's 1979.
You know, yeah, and it's kind of hard to talk about motherhood without talking both about gender and literal sex.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, like the way sexuality shows up in this film is like the violent sexuality of the alien, but it also shows up in the way that like our ability and feelings around reproduction are part of our sexuality.
Yes. And also part of our feelings towards gender and like the roles of women.
Right. So, hey, you know what? I'm going to take that segue.
Okay.
Because it was so interesting to me the way, like, I'd heard the story about how the script was written, that each character was unisex, right? And then how, you know, they are kind of sexless and genderless characters.
Oh my God, as an aside, before you get to your very important point.
Yes.
Did you see the thing about before they went with Sigourney Weaver, they were pretty serious about Meryl Streep?
Yes.
And like what kind of movie this would be if it had Meryl Streep instead of Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah.
Like would Meryl Streep have given the same non-binary energy? I mean, she's capable of everything.
She's a
I don't
pretty
know if
amazing
she's-
actress.
But I don't know if she would have thought to do that.
She would be an amazing final girl, actually.
I know, she really should be.
Wow,
But
what
anyway,
that would have done to
I know. It would have been
so much
different.
of the history of cinema.
But anyway, back to the main point, which is
the main
motherhood and femininity
point is,
and
no, but
gender
like,
roles.
No, stop. The way that, you know, we understand the script is like, you know, they're unisex people. The characters are kind of sexless and genderless, like in and of themselves. But then there's like when Ash and Ripley are having fighting and they're getting into an altercation and they walk into like this sleeping quarters or whatever the fuck it is.
Whose room is that?
And there's just pictures of naked women.
Is that, I mean, I assume we're supposed to, is it like
Whose room is that?
Parker's, maybe?
It's never said.
I feel like just because Parker has somewhat of an antagonistic relationship with Ripley in a way that can sometimes read as like sexist.
Right.
Though so does Ash, but Ash is a robot, so like what is his relationship to sexuality? Do robots have sex in this universe?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it could be Dallas. We have no reason to. It could be Lambert. We have no reason to think that either. Like there's
whose room is
covered
that?
in sexy naked women.
And it's like not secluded or isolated. It's just kind of in the middle of everything.
It is.
Like Ash just walks into frame and there's
it wasn't
naked
like
women on the
behind a
wall.
closed door or anything. And like what is happening there?
So yeah, this is why I was thinking about like how this is like secretly a pride movie. So like we have these like sexless characters, like there's a lot of, you know, like kind of transness kind of happening and from our perspective and non-binary things happening. But then there's those random sleeping quarters with a ton of incredibly
which is
pornographic
reasserting
images,
sexuality and gender existing in this world.
Yes, like sections of wall covered in pictures of naked women cut out from magazines, emphasizing the idea that the Nostromo is like a blue-collar, male-centric workplace.
Yes,
just like a garage or a mechanic yard, but in space.
Yeah, so I kind of wonder if the original script being unisex is more like they're all men. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like they could be played by anybody, but I'm writing from the perspective of a man, so I'm going to picture in my head naturally
a human being
being a red-blooded American man who would have sexy pictures hanging up.
And then there's also another really great so I thought it was really weird when like Ash is like basically trying to kill Ridley, but like does it by like balling up a magazine and like trying to like
that scene is just hard to watch.
Stuff it in her mouth. He's
weird. Trying to gag her, like suffocate her by gagging her with a porno mag.
This is the thing. It wasn't until this watch that I realized that is a porno magazine, which makes sense because there's porn all over the walls.
That scene is difficult for me to watch.
That's insane. So let me tell you what Michaela Barton has to say about it.
Okay, cool. And then I'm going to tell you probably what somebody else has to say about it.
Cool. The secondary villain of Alien is Ash,
yep.
an android who betrayed the crew of the Nostromo in efforts to ensure the survival of the alien for studying, blah, blah, blah. Though Ash in themselves, they're just using gender-neutral pronouns the entire way. Love it. Yep. Themselves isn't representative of any binary. Their actions in one particular scene do contribute to a forced stereotype onto Ripley. Mm-hmm. During the fight scene, Ash tries to suffocate Ripley with a pornographic magazine, right? The porno magazine, like, pretty obviously represents, like, extreme objectification of women.
Yeah.
To the point of violence. Another binary perception of female characters.
Yeah.
Right? And the use of the pornographic magazine as a means of suffocation, right, could be, like, seen as heteronormative sexuality and performance, like, being forced onto Ripley.
It just...
But... Ripley does still defeat Ash. I think because Parker and Lambert come by and
help her. Yeah, she doesn't get out on her own, which is fine.
That's fine.
Strength in numbers.
Yeah, they defeat Ash and resist the definition of gender performance by others, successfully being free from this binary until this the series' eventual downfall, because Ripley does die in the series. Yeah.
Spoilers.
So I thought that was really interesting.
I read this. I do think because that scene really. I mean, that's part of why I just kind of was like, I don't know.
Why so much rape?
Yeah, that's like where I was like, okay, I get that it's like. I mean, it's a very clear parallel to the face hugger orally raping
Kane.
Yeah. And therefore is aligning the alien with Ash and the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, symbolically, I get it. But also, I don't want to watch it, kind of. I was like, I don't want to watch that happen to Ripley. I don't know. But I did find this article. It's called Reassessing Alien Sexuality and the Anxieties of Men by Jason Hagstrom. And, like, he sort of is sort of talking to the fear of sexual confusion men were experiencing during second wave feminism, which is when this film was being written.
True.
And it's like, it's coming from this place of like we've said, everything about the crew is gender blind and sexless. And that's coming from this fear of like second wave feminism of like women joining the workforce and like women doing all the jobs that men can do. And like if women are not women anymore, then
women continually gaining like positions of power.
Yes.
Women, I mean, by 1979, women could get their own credit card without having their husband or father sign off on it. They're
still getting paid like 60% of what men were, but you know.
But they have more like financial freedom and independence and maybe less of a need for a man.
Yeah. And a lot of what Hackstrom's writing about is actually this idea of like the blurring of gender lines or the collapsing of gender binary leads to making men easily preyed on, you know, in terms of like sexually aggressive acts and also male birth.
And maybe especially in the context of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and he just sort of talks about like this male perspective of powerlessness and all about that. Yeah, the body that is being penetrated rather than penetrating. And like, but also just sort of like where he talks specifically about that scene. I'm assuming Jason Hagstrom's gender. Maybe I should say they. Everybody's non-binary now. He does get a little bit...
When in doubt, they it out.
Yeah. They do get a little bit Freudian and sort of talk about this one quote. In psychoanalytic terms, the idea of lack comes from the female's lack of a penis. However, in Alien, where sexuality is hopelessly confused, it can be said that the women also lack a vagina, necessitating the transfer of motherhood onto other objects, namely Kane and the film's multiple spaceships, which is kind of what I was saying about like that weird thing about technology and motherhood, and then like Kane's thing. But talking specifically about that scene that we're talking about, I just found it really interesting talking about how the lack of genitalia is really clear in Ash, kind of in that moment of like the collapsing of gender lines where he is using this like pseudo penis to do like his act of aggression.
Yeah.
And that it is like him attempting to take control by becoming a man. You know, and like reestablishing the patriarchy, which does seem like something he's trying to do this whole time in this way that's very like, oh, the robot wants to be a real man, kind of like weird way. And it's like, well, you don't need to do all that.
Yeah.
Dallas became a real man by getting gender reassignment surgery, so.
That's my headcanon.
And it's just, it's that interesting about, like, the tension of this film between, like, the lack of sex and the lack of gender, then not having anywhere to go and then erupting in these acts of, like, violence. And, like, all of the, like, phallic and yonic imagery of the alien and the alien spaceship and all of that. Just sort of like the gender doesn't have anywhere else to go because it's not in the people anymore. And so it sort of explodes explodes out elsewhere.
Yeah. And like the xenomorph we meet, like it is kind of masculine and feminine. Like, you know, there you could see it all over the internet. Like that kind of like that head shape is very phallic.
Yeah.
But like the mouth inside of a mouth also like
is
it's
like there's the vagina dentata.
Yeah. There's the labia,
penetrating penis.
There's the labia majora and the minora. You know,
it's like penetrating penis and vagina dentata all in one monster, which is just sort of like the fear of sex being the lines between the sexes being abolished and stuff. And so that's interesting with the alien, who's this like hypersexual aggressive thing that is both like male and female or whatever. You're not really sure what it is, but it's also interesting in terms of the like technology, which is the one that I have a harder time like wrapping my head around kind of in a weird way.
In what way?
I don't know. That it's like still very like sterile.
Yeah.
But it's called mother.
Yeah.
And the thing about, Kane bleeding either milk or semen, whichever way you want to see it. Ash,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep.
Ash doing that being, you know, an act of like either nourishment or creation, you know, procreation and stuff, but it coming from technology. I don't know. I just think the technology in this film is really interesting in a way that I can't put my finger on, and it feels like it's doing a lot with gender.
Yes. Very.
But you had thoughts on this?
I just found a really, really cool article called Representations of the Body in Alien, Mother and the Other. Daniel Pimley.
Okay, Pimley.
All right, Pimley.
The Pims.
Well, and Daniel Pimley also in this essay references Carol J. Clover. So,
Of course.
like, had to be, right?
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely fascinating. I don't even know how I'm gonna. So basically, what I wanted to do for my horror corner.
Find the link in our.
Yeah, right. Do the work for us.
Other than us just reading this article to you.
Basically, is kind of what's about to happen. So no, that's a joke. What I was thinking about for my horror corner is like, where is like, because it is a horror movie. And like, but it's like a sci-fi horror movie, right? And so like, where does the science fiction come in with like our constant, especially over the last like 50 years, like constant anxiety about technology,
right,
and the role technology will play in our lives and what it can do and can't do in comparison to humans.
And like what you've been saying about why isn't the alien, like the alien is not a psycho killer.
No.
But like why not? Because it's a sci-fi film.
Yeah.
But like
it's a monster in a monster movie.
But the beats are kind of the same in this case.
Very.
They aren't always the same in a monster movie, but in this case they are.
Yeah.
But it's sci-fi, so it's different.
So I was just thinking about, you know, the aspect of sexuality I think about the least, which is reproduction.
Yes.
Which
and yet
is an aspect of our sexuality.
A big
part of it. And yet we like to, especially nowadays, now, especially with, you know, oral contraceptive.
Yeah.
We can separate those things like much more so. But the fact is,
oh right, and like you said, this coming after Roe v. Wade.
Yes, 5 years. Yeah. But also like the way that this movie uses technology to like send a message, like a value message about humanity, like right, Ash's whole thing is like it's like a perfect killing machine unclouded by consciousness, or the illusion of morality, right? And like what we were kind of already talking a little bit about is like how like the idea of using technology to make humans less human,
right?
You know,
because technology in many ways also is like a perfect, quote unquote perfect being, unhampered by morality, or whatever.
I feel like it's been a minute since we've really dove into the theme of technology versus nature.
Yeah.
Probably Bodies. Last June.
We talked about it then.
Like the way that like, technology is seen as like this pure, again, like logical thing.
Yeah.
Yet just consistently continues to lose out to nature.
Right. We also focus a lot of anxiety on like every time there's a new technology, especially with like kids these days or whatever, which is another thing that makes this movie interesting. That something I was reading pointed out, which is that the main characters of this film are all kind of older.
They are, yeah.
Which is another thing that makes it not very slashery.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sci-fi, slashers.
And more like these are just some blue collar everymen, you know. But besides that point, the technology of like how we often have horror stories based around technology because that's a site of like the unknown. And like that's like there was a wall there and now there's a gateway of like, oh, I can talk to somebody from far away and I can't see their face. I don't actually know what they look like. Thinking of Black Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like, with bodies, all the things with their phones.
And then as soon as the thunderstorm, the hurricane comes, it goes away. They can't use it anymore.
These kids can't survive without their technology, and what are they going to do? And you know?
Nature will prevail.
Yeah, and that sci-fi has always been about, in a large part, it's been about a lot of things. It's been about humanity, what is human at its heart. But it's also about like, what is technology's role in making us human or making us less human, and can technology become human? Like, is Ash human? He's not. He's a robot. But is he a conscious Right. Is he an artificial intelligence?
I think yes.
Yeah, but I don't know if we ever know for sure.
No, I don't think we do.
Or
not in this movie. I think it becomes canon later, but not in this movie. Yeah, so like this author says, Alien is a unique illustration of the ways in which science fiction can be seen to interpret and express contemporary attitudes and anxieties caused by developments in science and technology.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this other author. Their name is Vivian Sobchak. Mm-hmm. They wrote an essay called "The Virginity of Astronauts: Sex and Science Fiction Film."
I love that.
Which discusses. And then I want to read this too because it seems like it discusses like the representation of the human body, especially the female body in American science fiction, right? Like especially through the 50s through the 70s. Thinking again about like that retrofuturism and like all of those sci-fi movies from like the 50s through the 70s, which are particularly, really getting on those like atomic anxieties, right? Entering the atomic age and nuclear powers and that kind of thing. And also like the alien as like an other that's coming to destroy everything we know and love, right? Yeah. So wait, I want to read this quote.
So is the alien just Russia?
No. Okay. Sorry. If astronauts are the archetypal male heroes of science fiction, then rationality and chastity are their virtues. These films being like the American science fiction films in the 50s through the 70s, insist that to embrace the future, we must leave behind our primitive biological inheritance and become just as cool and efficient as the technology that drives us into the future.
Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. You can absolutely see that in this film.
Yes.
Of like, the aliens' sexuality and birthing and all of that is like gross and aggressive and bad versus like technology and mother.
Yes.
And like, all of that stuff, which is like good and pure.
I want to read another Sobchak quote if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Sobchak advises us that virgin astronauts are not to be taken literally, but that the virginal astronaut of the science fiction film are a sign of penetration and impregnation without biology, without sex, and without opposite different sex. So women constitute a threat to this fantasy of an immaculate conception through technology.
Right, yeah.
Because the female body is like a living reminder of technology's failures. Like this is how you make a human, right?
Yeah, technology cannot do that.
Yeah, especially when you sexualize a woman's body, right? So like that ongoing cycle of birth and death and like the physical fragility of humans and like our continuance on relying on biological reproduction, right? Like kind of enshrine like the failures of technology to like replace the physiology and the process of the female body.
Yeah.
But also like kind of what you were talking is like if, we were talking about earlier, like if there is no gender, right, then there is no way to like separate people by gender or sex. And so like
there's a confusion there.
Yeah. So then
a collapse.
If there is no woman, then what does that mean for men? Yeah.
Yeah. Because how do you define a man without a woman and vice versa?
Yeah.
And I do think, there's one other thing I want to talk about in terms of like Ripley's.
Yeah.
Like gender, that's sort of, that goes to her sexualization. Mm-hmm. Because there is that scene. Because what is the deal with the last scene? That's another thing that Jason Hagstrom points out is that like that scene with Ash at least has like a symbolic purpose, like it's doing something. Whereas, how's he put it? But unlike that scene, Ripley's sudden near nudity has no purpose within the context of the film. It is for the audience alone and is dictated by the filmmakers rather than anything in the story itself. And I did have that moment when I was watching it where I was like, okay, so the alien's dead, so now Ripley can stop being a sort of like strong, manly or genderless, sort of like final girl,
sexless,
masculine, nice character and can go be a damsel who we can sexualize in her underwear that is way too small like with her hair down.
Yeah.
And like she was so sort of like gender ambiguous the whole movie. Yes. And then though it's like, let's just for our last 10 minutes really reassert, no. Woman here.
She's a woman.
She's a woman.
Yeah.
And then that being the moment where the monster is finally like face to face with her and she has to take him on when she's in her like her most vulnerable state.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like, what is happening here?
I totally get that. I just want to say one thing in Ripley's defense.
Yeah.
Which is the minute I get home.
Well, no, okay.
And I'm alone.
Not critiquing
I'm
Ripley.
taking off my clothes.
She is about to go into her hypersleep. I'm not critiquing.
She's getting comfy.
I mean, I guess actually I do have a complaint towards Ripley, which is like, get underwear that actually fits you. That looks uncomfortable as hell. But other than that, no, I'm critiquing the people who decided that was not in the script, that we needed then to be able to see Sigourney Weaver's nipples, prominent nipples, as you say.
And an underwear that's way too small.
Yeah, so I can see most of her ass. And then have the camera actually kind of pan up her a little bit when she's hiding in the closet. So we're like really like, ooh, that's her body. And it's like, why are we doing this suddenly? And that's one of those moments that was just sort of like, oh, gender, no matter what they do, like to try to like make this like some sort of like gender-free utopia or something, men can't help themselves but sexualize women.
Right.
And there also was a point where they almost went with the reason why the alien leaps out and tries to kill her is because he gets sexually aroused by seeing her.
Fuck off. Yeah.
Like that was almost what they did. Oh my God. Thank God they didn't.
Thank God they didn't.
But like it literally is just there because they're like, sex sells.
Yeah.
Let's get Sigourney Weaver showing her body.
Yeah. I also found, I cannot remember where I found this. Oh, well. Talking about the alien, the xenomorph as the antagonist and like what it does and doesn't want, right?
Yeah.
And like this says this antagonist did not want to enslave you or eat you or conquer your homeworld. It wanted to rape you.
Yes.
To invade your body with its own.
Yeah.
And kill by an act of violent penetration, right? Conflating sex with death.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and they were
And
very
then we just need to keep that going even in the final scene of this film.
And they were very clear about that even in their writing, because like Dan O'Bannon says clearly, like he literally says, this is a movie about alien interspecies rape.
Whoa, okay.
And he's like, that's scary because it hits all our buttons.
Yes.
And like he wanted
aliens.
Yeah.
Sexual
He wanted
assault.
like the symbolism of he called it a homosexual oral rape.
Okay.
Specifically to make male viewers not comfortable. He said something about, I forget which thing, if it was him or somebody else talking about how they wanted to make men cross their legs when they were watching it.
Fantastic.
Make them, yeah.
I'm never mad at that.
Yeah. And then, of course, Ridley Scott and all of them choosing H.R. Geiger's work as the starting base for their design, partially because of its like sexual energy and like kind of lack of gender while still being very sexual and very aggressive. Oh, another thing Dan O'Bannon said is that, yes, it is like male rape and like the male fear of penetration, and that the oral invasion of Cain functions as, he says, payback for all the horror films in which sexually vulnerable women are attacked by male monsters, which I do kind of like, okay, you're flipping the script, but then you kind of undo it. Well, not you, but Ridley Scott and whoever
gets
else
undone.
flips it over in the end. I just think sexuality is really interesting, and how it is so aggressive, and then how we then put it on Ripley in the end.
Yeah, this is just like this movie just has so much to say about bodies.
Yes. And the last thing, there is one like final thing I want to talk about in terms of why this movie, I don't know, isn't my favorite. Okay. And like the sexuality that I don't love, which is going back, like stepping away from Ripley, is going back to Lambert and how she dies.
Yes.
Because why is she the only one who we see the alien's tendril go up between her legs?
That's true.
Apparently they originally shot that to be part of Brett's death. And those are actually like Harry Stanton's legs. But they repurposed it for Lambert's. They're like, this doesn't make sense for him. Let's put it on the woman.
The woman, yeah.
And like
the only one who has a freeze response, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. Like, so we see that with her. And then when Ripley finds their bodies, we like see Parker's dead face. But the last shot we get of Lambert is like the bare skin of her foot and leg with blood dripping down it. And I'm like, where did her shoes and her pants go?
Yeah, right?
What is that implying there other than more like rape imagery?
Yeah.
And I did see this. There was this article by Hamad Norozi.
Okay.
And I just wanted to pull out this one quote. Started talking about that. Only after sneaking up on Brett and inducing fear does the xenomorph begin stabbing him repeatedly with its phallic mouth.
Yep.
This method of killing, described by many film analysts as an allegory for penetrative intercourse, is how it dispatches other surviving male crew members, swift and ruthless.
Yep.
Only when the xenomorph encounters its first female victim, a young woman named Lambert, does the alien engage in an activity that many fans believe to be sexual assault. Instead of swiftly killing Lambert, as with the men, the xenomorph corners her, getting as close as possible and slithering its prehensile tail up her leg, slowly, while she freezes in terror. What happens next is not shown, only implied by her terrified screaming, which lasts much longer than the men's screams. The final shot of Lambert is her nude legs dangling above the floor. And it's like...
Again, this is not a slasher movie.
No.
But that's a very slasher thing.
It's a very slasher thing.
Yep.
It's a very slasher. And it's very like, this film is like... I don't know. This film is trying to say so many different things at once.
Yes.
I guess. That makes it really, I don't know, conflicted with itself. Like, is this a gender-free place, or does gender very much exist? Mm-hmm. Like, is sexuality scary and aggressive? Are men the site of, like, gender anxieties and penetration, or is it still just women who are getting raped? Like, what is actually happening?
And then what role does technology play in that?
Yeah, why is technology mother?
Yeah.
What does it all mean?
What does it mean?
And I think probably that's partly because there were so many different... I mean, as often is the case with movies, there are like a lot of different hands working on it.
Of course,
you have
with different ideas.
Dan O'Bannon's original ideas, meeting, you know, Hall and the other writers who came in to like change things, meeting Ridley Scott's ideas. I don't know. So it all gets kind of like put on each other. And I can see the like, I don't know, the feminist readings of this film and like of all things, but it also kind of comes down to like, is the final girl a feminist archetype or not? And it's like, in some ways, yes. In other ways, no.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. That's sort of my final thought on this film in general.
I think I just want to close with one more quote.
Yeah.
From the representations of the body in Alien.
Okay.
As we were talking about the use of American science fiction novels and films, especially throughout the 1950s and the 70s. But like, there's this other quote that I really like. Just like one more connection to what makes humans human.
Yeah.
And what role does technology play in that?
Which is, what sci-fi is.
It says, many of the new ideas flourishing in science fiction can be seen as a reaction to advances in science and technology that have emerged to redefine the boundaries of our bodies. Surgical procedures such as hip replacements, organ transplants, pacemakers, open heart surgery. The first heart transplant was performed in 1967.
Yeah, earlier than you would think.
Yes, shows that the components of our body can be repaired, replaced, and augmented and modified.
Not to mention transgender icons Dallas and Lambert.
Fantastic.
And that the first sex reassignment surgery happened way earlier than you would think.
Yep. And then they really get into it. The application of human in vitro fertilization.
Yep.
Which really starts to kick off in 1978.
Yeah. Curious.
And so the application of in vitro fertilization is kind of like demystifies and sort of like makes a mechanical process out of reproduction, right? Meanwhile, the science of genetic engineers promised one day we would be capable of building better humans, right? Like the way that we're kind of seeing like gene editing. Right.
And then is that so interesting in the way that the alien, I know this is something that comes up more in the later films and like in the Predator, Alien versus Predator verse, but that like part of the alien's reproduction is also taking on some of the genes of like, it's a bipedal creature because it was impregnated within a bipedal creature and things like that.
I do want to say something about that, but I just want to finish this.
Yeah.
And then they also go on to talk about how, like, I mean, even in the workplace, we see, like, computers show up and just even something like a Xerox machine, right? Kind of showing how easy it could be to replicate and duplicate something. Meanwhile, kind of thinking about humans being reduced down to a data set.
Yeah.
Right? You know? Promoting the idea that human biology might become equally malleable. Opened up and examined, the body was now a thoroughly contested space.
Right, yeah. And that's sort of what, like, while that is what the technology represents, it's also sort of like the anxiety that the alien is presenting by sort of like making a more pure human.
Yeah, right. Okay, so yes, this is what I wanted to mention about the alien. Is that we don't understand that in this movie, but we do understand that like the way that alien procreates is very interesting. So the xenomorph queen lays the eggs.
Okay.
The eggs just have to wait.
Yeah.
for something to come by.
Did you hear H.R. Geiger's original design for the eggs? Just opened up with like one slit.
Oh!
And they were like,
It's a
okay,
vagina.
I know we're doing vagina stuff, but that's too
much like a vagina.
So he was like, fine, we'll make it a little cross so the Christians will be happy.
That works fine. Yeah. And then the eggs are just there until something comes around, right? So in this instance, it's a human.
It's Cain.
In
yeah.
other films, it is other animals.
Yeah, I
and
read
other
it's like
creatures.
a dog or something in the Predator.
And so then
or like the Predator
facehugger
itself.
jumps out, assaults whatever.
Impregnates, inseminates.
Yeah. The actual xenomorph DNA into that person.
Yeah.
And then it incubates inside the person or the whatever.
I wonder if it has to be through the mouth or if you could do it like through the ear or like does it matter what location on the body?
It depends. Yeah. So in different films, like it enters different ways. Like there's one where like there's like some dude's walking through like an alien cave and he kicks up some spores, inhales some spores, and it's bad news bears for him.
Crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, it's almost like what the alien does is it like takes the best features, whatever its definition of best is,
and then makes it better.
Most survivable features, right? Because this is what Ash is also saying. Like,
it's the max efficiency. It's the like streamlined down to just what you need for maximum survival.
To survive in extreme conditions, to be able to procreate in extreme conditions, right? So
God, and it already is such a killer. Did it really need the acid blood? That does just seem like overkill.
I don't know. I think that makes sense. It's like
I guess while it's a baby,
you can't even hurt it.
Yeah,
like even hurting it will hurt you.
Yeah, it's already got like an exoskeleton. Come on, dude, save something for the other people.
It's the perfect killing machine. What I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it like uses like the DNA and like uses that to like mutate and evolve.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like the chest burster, and then that crawls away, and then the chest burster develops into an adult xenomorph who's kind of considered like a drone. Again, I was
that
like
more insects.
I
bee,
did
ant sort of.
Yeah,
with the queen and the drones.
Yeah, kind of more of a drone because I was reading like the whole life cycle and all the different forms of xenomorph there are, and like none of them are gendered except the queen. So I think the drones
like,
is
that just us putting our gender on them when like why does it have to be gendered? Obviously, male pregnancy can happen, so why is it gendered?
Yeah, I don't.
Why is it a queen? Why is it not just a sovereign?
I think because it needed to be the foil for Ripley as she
is also a mother.
Yeah, evolves into her motherhood. Yeah. Yep.
Because it all comes down to motherhood.
That's definitely what Aliens is about, us for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we should start wrapping this up, and I just don't think Jonesy the cat has gotten quite enough attention.
We are a cat-focused pod.
We sure are.
Jonesy needs more love. Jonesy is obviously the ultimate pure life form.
Yeah.
The height of evolution because he is a cat.
And does end up successfully hiding from the alien.
Yeah. And getting off and is a final girl.
So we were trying to think of a game that had something to do with cats. And at first we were thinking like, oh, maybe we could try and come up with a scenario in which we wouldn't go back for our cat. And we're like, I don't think there is one.
There just kind of
that doesn't exist.
House on fire. They always say you should not get your animals.
I don't give a fuck.
Animals.
Yeah.
And my stupid idea is that we rank the characters based on how close they come to being like a cat.
Okay.
Because we're talking about ultimate life forms here. Obviously, it's Jonesy.
Right. Is the cattiest of them.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do think some other characters exhibit cat-like qualities. And so I will just say my top pick right now for most cat-like character, and thus winner of this bracket, is Cain. Because it is curiosity that kills him.
This is true. He's a very curious
little guy. And he just sort of like prances around, and he's like, oh no, I fell in a hole. I'm just here now.
Yeah.
You know, when cats fall off a chair and they're like, no, I meant to do that.
I guess I'm here now. Yeah.
You know? I just feel like, and he's very like, I'm going to go out there. Can I be outside now?
Yeah.
I'd like to be outside. Can I be outside? So, I don't know.
But then once he goes outside, he doesn't immediately start scratching at the door to come back in.
No, he probably should have, though.
Yes, he should have.
Once he got outside, he got into more trouble than he could handle. Cat.
Facts.
So, I don't know. So, I just think that he is probably the most cat-like in the film.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Lambert is like a certain type of cat.
Right.
The one who is very noisy.
Yeah. Like a Siamese cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who just always has something to complain about.
Right.
Something dramatic is happening.
A grievance.
Yeah, some grievance. Yes, Lambert has a grievance.
I mean, I think in some ways the alien is like a cat.
Okay, speak more. Tail.
Right? Tail, sure.
Very sharp teeth.
The way that, it has no issues in like asserting its boundary.
Oh, yeah.
And, what it needs from other people.
Yeah, it's like mine now. And
Yeah. I'm gonna eat you.
yeah.
And that'll be that, right? I get to decide the way like cats have that kind of power,
Yeah.
Just speaking of, a cat just walked by. So maybe like the alien's kind of like a cat, especially with those sharp teeth and the claws.
The only thing I could say for Parker being like a cat is that he is very aware when it's time for him to have his meal.
Sure. He's asking about his share, just like, well, what about my meal though?
Yeah, what about my meal?
Yeah. In some ways, Ash is like a cat because he's very, stiff and standoffish.
That's true.
And distant.
And then randomly gets the zoomies.
And then does randomly get zoomies. Sure.
Dallas is not giving cat.
He's not giving cat.
His name is so like dog.
Yeah.
Dallas gives dog.
Yeah. Is Brett like a cat? Well, Brett dies looking for the cat.
Brett dies looking for... I don't think Brett... No, Brett, unfortunately, is very human.
Yeah.
And he stops to, like, feel some water on his face and just, like, have a sensory moment.
Yeah,
like,
no,
that's not giving cat at all.
That's your first problem right there.
Yeah.
Is Ripley like a cat at all?
That one's interesting. I almost feel like she could have a little bit of dog energy, too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Dogs aren't very logical. And she's very logical.
Yeah. And she does go through a lot of stuff to make sure that Jonesy is safe.
Which is just... I don't know. Perhaps we need to see the rest of her journey to decide if she is ultimate cat or not. Are cats known for being good mothers? No, right? They're not. You don't say mother cat.
Margot was a dick to her kids. Especially like once they're old. Like I think they have the motherly instinct until they can take care of themselves. Like, all right, kid, get out of here. Because I think also as like cats grow up, mom cats don't necessarily always recognize their kids and like still consider them like a threat to their territory. So no.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I don't think Ripley's a cat.
No, I don't either. I think Kane is the cat.
I think Kane's the ultimate cat. I think Ash comes close.
Ash is also a cat.
Yeah,
for
I think
sure.
it goes Kane, Ash.
And Lambert is a whiny Siamese.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
We figured this out.
We figured it out.
I love this for us. Yeah, no, Kane is like a Bengal. A very adventurous cat, always wanting to investigate, very curious. Ash is like
yeah, give them all species.
Yeah,
breeds.
for sure.
Give them all breeds. Which is the
alien is definitely just a black cat.
Oh yeah.
Just like a pure
Yeah,
like,
I see that.
Ash is like the orange cat with like one brain cell.
Yeah.
That like just most of the time just sleeps on the chair and then every once in a while has something to say about what you're doing.
Yeah.
When
or
it's
just
wrong.
like it'll be the middle of the night and it'll come running through the room.
Yep. And then Lambert is a loud Siamese.
Yeah.
Who's got something to say about everything.
And Dallas is just a German Shepherd.
Dallas is a German Shepherd for sure.
He thinks he's real big and tough.
But he's not.
I mean, like, he kind of is, but also, like, it's not the best environment for you to have to be the big and tough guy. Let's just cuddle. He seems like a man who needs cuddles.
Indeed.
And I don't know what Ripley is.
No, me neither. Maybe like about like some kind of herding dog. Yeah.
Oh, she's totally like a collie.
Yeah.
She's totally a collie.
Maybe Brett's like
the shepherd.
Oh, I was thinking Brett would be like a Great Dane.
Oh!
Like a big old Great Dane.
I could see that.
Walks kind of slow. Maybe
Gets
drools.
Distracted by sensory moments.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if that's true for Great Danes, but it feels true for Scooby-Doo.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, and then, Parker is also, I don't know, Parker's like a kitten or something.
Yeah, and who just wants to get into trouble.
Yeah. And
Parker can be a tabby getting into trouble.
There it is. And then, yeah, maybe the alien is like a black cat.
Yeah.
Void agent of chaos.
Yeah.
Love it. We did it.
Symbol of doom. We did it.
They have been categorized.
I'll draw a picture for the Instagram.
It has nothing to do with gender.
So this has been Deep Thought Shallow Plots.
Join us next time
as we continue our hot alien summer.
Yeah, so Katie wasn't super into this one, but next time
it's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Which is Jordan Peele's Nope. Yep. Love it. Can't wait. We're going to have so much to talk about. Thank you, as always, to Sound Guy Matt.
Check us out on Instagram. I might draw the crew as animals.
Absolutely.
So
I actually love that idea.
Yeah, look out for that.
Until next time. Before we dock, I think we ought to discuss the bonus situation.